To the I Stand Correct podcast. Make sure you hit like and subscribe for more content just like this. For years, the Republican Party unified behind Donald Trump because he worked. His rallies turned out voters. He won states that had been out of reach, and GOP leaders, even skeptical ones, fell in love because Trump was election gold. Now, as Trump heads towards what many have seen as the inevitable lame duck future, the unity is starting to crack. With Israel as a hot-button issue between young and old, question is, what comes next for the GOP? All right, welcome to the I Stand Correct podcast. It's America's favorite of the top 20,000 podcasts on Earth. I hope you guys are getting through it. It seems like Christmas should have already been here by now. Like, we're all kind of phoning it in and just waiting for it to kind of come to pass. I've already started eating terribly. You know, because I'm always like, why am I focusing on my diet when I'm going to crash out in a couple days? So I'm just going to crash out now. So I already feel terrible. Getting an advanced start on feeling terrible during the holidays. Christmas coming up this week, if I'm not mistaken. I hope you guys all have a good Christmas. Let's talk about what's going on politically with MAGA, the Republican Party seemingly fracturing apart. We're seeing that going on right now. And I think to understand the Republican Party, you have to understand something. I've shown this graph before, but there's more diversity of thought on the political right than on the left. The left is very unified around their cluster of ideas, whether that's a single stance on immigration, a single stance on transgender rights, a single stance on the economy, a single stance on foreign affairs. Everyone's clustered fairly well together. There's very little disagreement. And part of that is because as a cult, if you disagree with anyone in the cult, you typically will get expelled for that, excoriated for that, shamed for that. You're not allowed to have a lot of diversity on thought. Whereas on the right, we've got a lot of differing viewpoints on how the economy should be handled, certainly on how we should be dealing with Israel and other foreign affairs. We've got lots of different ideas, even on how tariffs should work and things like that. A lot of Republicans, MAGA people have been agreeing with Donald Trump, and some people have been differing, myself included. You know, I was someone that initially was very, very pro-Trump, and then, you know, as time goes by, you eventually find reasons to kind of fall out with a guy and kind of get black-pilled by him. But we should go back and kind of like take a 10,000-foot view on how we got Donald Trump and what's happening now, especially since it's really been such a long time. Those 4 Biden years have put us even farther away from even being able to remember where Donald Trump came from back in 2014, 2015. He emerged kind of out of nowhere. He was a candidate for president, and nobody thought that he was going to really last the first round of primaries. I can remember Ann Coulter coming on Stephen Colbert, and Colbert asked her who she thought was probably going to be the strongest candidate for president. She said Donald Trump. And this is before Colbert went all in on going after Donald Trump. So you have to remember that this is before he made his career out of scandalizing and putting down Donald Trump. But everyone in the audience had a good laugh because he was seen as somebody who was not a serious candidate. The way that he talked, the way he conducted himself, the idea that you could build a wall between the United States and Mexico, it was seemed as fanciful at the time. But his influence over the Republican Party grew beyond just rhetoric, became electoral power. He was elected president, and there was long-standing skepticism that would even happen in the party establishment. But he was able to build up a coalition of all these different people who have all these different thoughts, like that cluster I showed you, all those people with varying different viewpoints. He was able to kind of bring them all together under one guy, which was Donald Trump. I mean, because before that, they were fractured. People like Chris Christie, people like Marco Rubio. We had no strong contenders, no single default leader before Donald Trump. And even traditional GOP figures who are criticizing him, people like Ted Cruz, largely closed ranks because he brought in results. He reshaped the party's identity. If you wanted to get elected as a Republican in Congress, in the House and the Senate, you needed to kind of co-opt the glory or the momentum of the Trump movement. Trump was tremendously popular, and so if you're a Republican, you wanted to align yourself with that populism. And so His coalition blended together a lot of people from the working class and energized young Republicans. And the tension that exists within that cluster of differing opinions all kind of got neutralized under Trump because everyone kind of got behind him. So what's happening now? Well, Trump, his political power is, well, I mean, it's strong, but it's waning, right? Because he has an eventual expiration date, despite what he may say in the news, just to get a rise out of people. He's not going to run for a third term. So we're heading towards a power vacuum. His influence might also be fading because he's always under some legal challenges. There's always judges trying to stop whatever his agenda is. It seems like we had a lot of momentum and a lot of good things going in, say, the first, I won't even say 100 days with Doge and everything else, but it seems like everything is slowed. The Epstein files didn't get released. The JFK files, the MLK files was a big nothing burger, and all these things that we were really counting on to really change the way that America had been rolling since the Biden administration. A lot of those things didn't happen. I'm one of those people that kind of got black pilled. Am I happier that we have him as president than Joe Biden or Kamala Harris? Of course, but for somebody that goes out there and routinely says, we're going to win and we're going to win big, it just doesn't feel like the biggest win. So what's coming next after Trump has this lame duck session? Eventually, especially if we lose the midterms, the last 2 years of his presidency are going to be mired in impeachment hearings and more court stuff. And this attempt to shamefully negate his presidency and make sure he doesn't have a legacy to pass on, and to taint the MAGA movement, because that's the grassroots of how Republicans are coalesced together. Like I said, we have all these disparate ideas, but it's through the Make America Great Again movement that they all come together. So it's important that MAGA be destroyed if you're anyone other than a Republican. So Vance is increasingly seen as the heir apparent to the throne, even though we have no kings. He's been earning support from conservative voices and media platforms, but again, not everyone agrees. There's still prominent and traditional GOP leaders, the GOP that was your dad's party, the Bush party, guys like Rand Paul and Lindsey Graham. They're not, so far, have not endorsed Vance for the nomination for the Republican Party, which is early, but it's also kind of insane when you have someone who seems to be handpicked by the president. And if you're supporting the party in power and you're looking elsewhere for who should be in the primary and who should lead the Republican Party in 2028, it's kind of insane that it's not going to be that guy. The Republican Party has had this problem before. After Nixon left, Ford came in, pardoned Nixon, and then there was a big question. Ford was the sitting president. He still had 2 viable terms in him under law because he hadn't been president that long. But then Ronald Reagan comes around, and there's this idea about whether or not it should be Ford, the sitting president, should run for president again, or if it should be Ronald Reagan. And Reagan was tremendously popular. He had been since the 60s, since his speech for Barry Goldwater running for governor and being the governor of California. So we had this kind of divide before, where are you a Ford Republican or are you a Reagan Republican? And so we've always had these critical divides, and sometimes divides like these have led to some of the biggest disasters in our country's history. Think about Bush 41 and Ross Perot, right? You have Bill Clinton coming along, and he's making certain conservative remarks like the era of big government is over, and you have Bush 41 saying no new taxes, and yet we have taxes. So Clinton's writing sort of a consensus building. I'll be Democrat, but I'm going to be conservative because the era of big government is over. And then let's throw a little chaos into the mix with Ross Perot, who's going out there and he's seriously courting legitimate conservative voters. So all of a sudden you have conservatives voting for Bill Clinton, you have conservatives voting for Bush, and you have conservatives voting for Ross Perot. And what we got was the rise of the Clintons, who would, of course, do any number of terrible things that continue to affect this country to this day. But anyway, Republicans refusing to endorse Vance is causing internal divides, and it's all about not necessarily personality, but identity. What is the party going to be after this huge dominating personality that is Donald Trump is gone? Of course, the thing for young voters that's becoming more and more apparent if you're just spending any time on social media is the GOP's attitude towards Israel. It's becoming a bigger issue than tax cuts or even social policy. Young Republicans are sick of supporting Israel. We're sick of sending money to that country, a country that is supposed to be our greatest ally. What the benefits are of having them as our greatest ally is unclear to me. As one of the people that I guess you could consider an old Republican, I was a long supporter of Israel. I was told that we needed to support the democracy that was in the Middle East, the only country over there that reflected our values. But the more I think about it, it's like, is that really enough of a reason for us to be sending billions and billions and billions of dollars over there? And for what? I mean, Israel's a big boy. They have nukes. So they can take care of themselves. I think if we stand by them as political allies, that's one thing. I mean, we certainly have more in common with them, and we're more likely to be on the same page with issues than, say, us and Syria. I get that, but why are we supporting them financially so much? They're in a bad neighborhood. They're surrounded on all sides by people who want to kill them. But as I said, they have a very robust Mossad, very robust IDF, and ultimately they have nukes, and ultimately they have other partners in the West that they can benefit from. It doesn't always have to be the United States. I'm kind of tired of being the big brother to Israel, particularly since Israel likes to go around and even though they're in a bad neighborhood, kind of act like a bully. You'd think that they would want to be a more defensive posture, but it seems like this is just my feelings, but it seems like they tend to pick fights with their neighbors, or at least aggravate them, and then expect big brother, the United States, to step in. For decades, support by Republicans was universal. It was actually ironic that I always felt, or this was maybe my perception too, that a lot of Jewish people were voting for Democrats. It just seemed to be that way. And it was like the Republican Party that was really supporting the national identity or the national state of Israel. But younger conservatives, Gen Z activists, all these people who are now changing the narrative because of social media, getting away from mainstream narrative, they see the America First motto of MAGA is meaning we need to get out of all these foreign entanglements. And when they look back at the conservative history of the United States, they see that, like, well, we were always supposed to avoid foreign entanglements. We were always supposed to be getting away from that stuff. George Washington, our first president, warned America, I think in his farewell speech, that we should stay out of foreign issues. And so we have a huge ideological split that's going to, I think, shatter the party in the same way that views over the rights for African Americans kind of shattered the Whigs and the Republicans. You had Whigs coming along who were a party certainly opposed to Southern Democrats, but they didn't necessarily embrace the idea of abolition or of equal rights for Black people. The Republicans did that. The Republicans were a radical subset of the Whig Party, and they broke off. And so we're seeing a divide of almost that same scale in terms of how we relate to Israel. It's a big schism in the party, and it threatens to really break apart the party, and I think allow Democrats to become resurgent. And they need a break because Democrats and their policies and everything that we're kind of seeing coming out of that party right now, frankly, not a good look. There's credibility gaps around classified information. The Epstein files have still not been released, despite the fact that Congress ordered them released. Donald Trump said he wanted them released. Pam Bondi's not releasing them. This morning, they're talking about taking some sort of legal action against her for being in breach of her orders to release them. She said she won't do it. Some documents dropped, heavily redacted documents, a lot of pictures of Bill Clinton. I got kind of a kick out of the social media where Hillary Clinton issued a statement saying that the entire Department of Justice is at risk for suicide if they don't stop showing pictures of Bill Clinton on Epstein's Island. I thought that was funny. And of course, because I said that, now my channel is nuked, but that's okay. They won't release the Epstein files and a lot of the redacted stuff, not because it's hurtful to the survivors or the victims. I'm sure there's consideration for that, but a lot of the survivors, victims, they have been willing to come forward and voluntarily talk about these things. They haven't been allowed to do it. The national security is the reason why we can't talk about what's going on with the Epstein files. But that brings up an interesting question. Why would disclosure be withheld unless foreign intelligence interests were involved? How can we say that this is an issue of national security unless it involves other nations? Right? As soon as we talk about national security, we're talking about the United States on a world stage, how we relate to other countries. What's the risk from information being released to other countries? And what are these other countries, and why are we concerned about that? If this was merely a domestic affair of law enforcement, I know there's exceptions to this too, particularly in cases where these kinds of allegations are being made, but largely you want these things to be made public. The right to a public trial, speedy trial, these are all constitutional rights. So, but why is it that all these things are being closely held, closely guarded for national security reasons? That's how you know that other countries are involved in this, and what other countries would be. Well, the former Prime Minister of Israel, Ehud Barak, is known to have visited that island several times. I know that Prince Andrew from the United Kingdom was also there, but something tells me that we're not worried about him. I don't think that that's the national security interest that we're so worried about. But whether or not it's even a fact that the island and Jeffrey Epstein was some sort of Mossad honeypot for blackmail, it doesn't matter if that's true or not, because a lot of Gen Z and young Republicans believe that it was. And the secrecy and the double standards and the calling for the files to be released while Biden was president and them still not being released while Donald Trump is president, it feels like a betrayal. It feels like a bait and switch. And the last thing that Donald Trump needed was for him to conform to any traditional mold of what a politician was, because that's not what got him elected. Promises made, promises kept is kind of what defines Donald Trump for a lot of conservatives and a lot of Republicans. And now we're looking at a Donald Trump where promises made, promises pending is sort of like what we're looking at now. And it's severely disappointing. And it's a byproduct of him being in his second term. We had hoped that him being a lame duck meant that all the brakes are about to come off of this car, that he could finally go out there and do all the insane things that a lot of us extremely conservative people want him to do. But it seems like to be the opposite is happening. And so it makes us all feel very black-pilled. Pam Bondi, she's a friend of Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush loves her. It's kind of a bad indicator for people in the MAGA party for anyone to be Bush approved. We saw guys like John Bolton and other Bush acolytes in the first Trump term, and these were the guys who undermined Trump, and we don't like seeing that now. And then you have other people like Kash Patel. He's the director of the FBI, right? So it's his job to investigate domestic things of the violations of federal law. He's a law enforcement officer. I think if you maybe reduce that as much as possible to define his role, that's what it would be. So why is Kash Patel talking about how important it is that the primacy of Israel in the United States is the most important thing, that fighting anti-Semitism is so important in this country? Why is that? Why isn't it all the violations of federal law? Why isn't it all the people who snuck into this country over the last 4 years who don't have the United States' best interests at heart? It seems to me like we probably have more dangerous foreign nationals in the country now than we did before 9/11, and seeking out those people and expelling them or prosecuting them where we should be the primary interest of Kash Patel, not hurt feelings by the part of a certain subset of our population or some other country. I hate to remind you of this. This is something that's very, very uncomfortable, but did you know that racism is not against the law? It's not against the law to have racist feelings. So why is this a priority for Kash Patel? It's not even an issue of federal law, and yet it's something that he's working on. For a movement that's built on America first, these patterns feel very contradictory, feel very alienating, particularly to people who are just now coming into politics, people who like Charlie Kirk, people who are supporting Donald Trump because they're energized and they're new to the process. They're getting blackpilled right away. And whether or not you agree with anything that's going on with Israel, the contention between the old GOP guys my age and guys my father's age and the young people is very real. And the truth is that the party belongs to the young people. We're all going to pass away at some point. and the young people are going to inherit the Republican Party. So maybe we should embrace changes, even if that might means that donations to campaigns from outside this country suddenly start drying up. So traditional Republicans, can they deal with a shift in donors? Maybe not coming from Israel. Can they change their policies away from being Israel focused while they're taking money from Israel? Obviously, I think money's the thing that's really driving that. But they're not going to get elected anymore, and it won't matter if their money coming from Israel is going into their campaign coffers if suddenly they're out of power and they're out of influence. And once they're out of influence, of course, the money turns off too. So we're at a crossroads. Like I said, with Nixon and Ford and kind of with Bush and Perot. You have a former president who wants unified. Well, he's not former yet, but he's going to become a former president who wants to unify the party. And he's not going to be the gravitational center anymore. Is it going to be J.D. Vance? Probably. But the traditional GOP, the never Trumpers, guys like Lindsey Graham, guys like Rand Paul, and other people who are pretending to be Trump acolytes like Ted Cruz and John Thune, they're definitely going to want to move the country back towards a traditional GOP pre-Trump era type of basically just enforcing the status quo. Progressives are always trying to change the country. And at face value, you'd think that conservatives were trying to conserve what they thought were great values or what made the country great, but they just drag their feet as much as possible to preserve the status quo that put them in power. J.D. Vance is stepping forward, but other people are kind of stepping to the side. Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's resigned from Congress. I think she's trying to get out right now so that she can come back on her own terms. I think that she thinks that Trump's going to whiff it, that the last 3 years of his presidency are going to be an embarrassment, that are going to be a waste of time. And she wants to be able to take a break and come back and say, well, I was there, but I left early. I was the first one who left the sinking ship that was MAGA, that was Donald Trump. And I'm going to come back with my own conservative platform and future for the party. And I think that she's probably not the only one, but she's taking a big gamble because if Trump remains popular the next 3 years, if Vance inherits a big crown or a big throne of the MAGA movement, she's going to continue to be on the outside of that. But she's making a bet that Donald Trump is going to fail as a president, or that he's going to be forced to fail, that if he loses the midterms, that the last 2 years of his presidency are just going to be sort of hamstrung in a quagmire of not getting anything done and ultimately looking weak and feckless. So that's what I think is going on. I'm curious to see what some of you people in the comments think. Thank you all for joining me today. I appreciate all of you who are here on this horrible Monday morning. Brittany's here, of course. Felony's here. Who else is here? Lauren. This is Merry Christmas. Good morning to Lauren, and Merry Christmas as well. Tyler's here. Michael Hendricks is here. Clark's here. Clark, I haven't seen you in forever. Clark, that's what a lot of us think. That's for sure. Tallyhoo says, I am late, but I'm here. Glad you're here. Just as a reminder, the show does start always at 10:30 every Monday morning, whether you get notifications or not. Salamander's here. It's good to see you as well. Don't often see you guys. It looks like you guys are just sort of all talking together, and you don't need me for anything. That is why I am launching a special John Discord where all of you can be together and talk about me even after I no longer podcast, because all of you guys are such great friends, but you don't need me to do it. Case in point, look at all the people in the chats who don't need me at all. Let's move on to memes. Of course, the memes are going to be, a little political right out the gate. I try to organize them so that we transition from the political to the absurd to the sad. That's kind of what I like to do. And I'm starting a new segment in this show. It's called John's Big Take. I'm piloting it in this episode where I'm saving my biggest and most egregious and most insane hot take for the end of the show. So you're going to want to stick around for that. I should have mentioned that right at the beginning, but like I said, this is the first time doing this. Just a reminder from Human Events Daily, Islamic terrorism is the result of thousands of years of inbreeding, people marrying their brother, pedophilia. Aisha was just 9 years old, remember? Sexual assault, violence, and a prophet who told all of them that all of the above is perfectly acceptable. Islam is a virus. Deport them all. I would say that Islam is also the codification and the religification of human vice and brutality and everything that makes a human being horrible. It's not about embracing the spiritual, the divine side of human beings that we all have. It's about just really leaning into everything that would make you a bastard and saying that that's your religion. So not a big fan of that. You're seeing a lot of people right now talking about deporting all of the people who are Muslims. I hate to tell you this, but there's significant federal law, there's significant codification that would stop you from deporting someone solely on the grounds of their religion. That's kind of the downside of liberty, is that people are going to use it for the wrong reason. And the only way to stop those people from using their liberty for the wrong thing, like degrading the culture and the values of the West, is to abridge that liberty. You have to let the terrorists win. You have to abridge the liberty, but you have to become the fascists, of course, that everyone says that we are, and we would have to deport based off of somebody's religion. I think it's the only thing that could save the West, but I think that we'll be too ambivalent about it. I think that we do a lot of hand-wringing and we don't know whether or not something is a good idea. I think stopping and counting the cost of something, counting the cost to yourself, the cost to your conscience, and even the cost to your enemies is something that good people do. We're always stopping and wondering of whether or not what we're doing is the right thing. We demonstrate a conscience when we take big actions, but we have to remember that Islam has no such conscience. They don't stop and question the cost to their enemies or the cost to themselves. They do not care. They want to take over the world, and they want to do it with insidious exploitation of our policies, or with violence, or whatever works best. Certainly, they tried to spread the religion by the sword during the Crusades and were met with mixed results. But now that they can do it by simply taking advantage of society's understanding and desire to be seen as forgiving and multicultural, they'll embrace that and they'll exploit that. And unfortunately, the only way I think to win that battle is by becoming worse than your enemy. There's significant federal law that will ever prevent that from happening. But I think that it's nice to see the sentiment happening, that more people are speaking out against the evils of Islam, because we can actually stop them without deporting them. If we have a robust culture in this country that says, no, we do not like the values of Islam, then even if they have a lot of people here, they'll never be able to bring their cultural values to a critical mass to the point where it's a catalyst for American culture itself. They'll never actually be able to change our culture, as long as our culture is strong enough to stand up against it. We can live side by side, not easily and not bloodlessly, but we can stop them from taking over the country through sheer tyranny of will. As long as our will is stronger than theirs is, we can stop that from happening. Just as a reminder, 6% of Minnesota's population is committing 62% of the state's violent crime. I had family coming over this week from Minnesota, and I openly referred to it as Shittasota because I'm clever like that. I have long been a critic of Minnesota. I have seen them as a horrible person in this neighborhood, the state of Minnesota. And every time I go there, I feel nothing but malaise and just a general creeping feeling like languor and death is what awaits me in Minnesota. Whatever takes you to Minnesota has brought you there to die. Interestingly, they're getting rid of the light rail in Minnesota, and they're replacing it with buses again. Just yet another pipe dream of progressive politics that has failed there. Did you really win World War II if 80 years later this person turns up your house to arrest you for wrong speech? We're here to take your daughter's phone. She looked at a meme she wasn't allowed to look at, so I'm going to have to go ahead and take this away from you. Yes, Great Britain, this is where they're at. Did they win the Blitz? Did they survive the war? No, because tyranny has come to their door. Only now it looks like this. It's important not to judge an entire religion based off of 15 years of history and actual teachings of its prophet. So it always drove me nuts about George W. Bush. I get that he has to try to remain populist and be a president for everyone, but when they said that the peaceful teachings of Islam and of the Quran, I'm just like, all of this is verifiable. We could actually read the Quran, and when it says that their goal should be the goal of the is a caliphate, a worldwide caliphate, and a jihad against infidels, that it's fine to lie to us and they should try to deceive us and kill us at every step. And yet we had people out there preaching that it was a religion of peace. And now we have people ambivalent about the coming of Sharia law to this country. I saw someone was talking about how this was a man on the street interview in England, which is a stand-in for us. It's a representative of the West, talking about how will you feel if London becomes a Muslim city? She goes, oh, I'm fine with it. I think people should be allowed to live their culture. And he's like, well, how do you feel about Sharia law? She goes, yeah, it's fine if it's part of their culture. And then he says, are you aware that under Sharia law, a man can beat his wife and there is no legal recourse for that? She goes, well, that's awful. Well, I'll just move away. You're going to move away. So you're going to allow them to advance and take away London, the capital of England and of Great Britain. And then your solution to that problem is to retreat. Eventually, you will have nowhere to retreat. There will be no place left. There will be no safe place left. If the United States, if Western Europe, if they all fall to Islam and Sharia law, then there is nowhere for you to be safe. Women, homosexuals, or anyone who simply doesn't want to bend the knee to Islam is in danger of that. And the West is crumbling at a rate faster than you think that it is. Look at the birth rate, look at the death rate, look at our drastically changing culture. It's tremendously different than even if it was 5 years ago. The world is spinning on so fast anymore. Dang it, Bobby, give me that calculator. I don't care how many ovens there were, they're still our greatest ally. It's funny. It's interesting. I'm not a Holocaust denier by any means. I think all that stuff was fairly well documented. But numbers are strange. Where these numbers are coming from, I'm not really sure. They've been revised over the years, but it's like you're not allowed to downwardly revise the number of people killed in the Holocaust, because that's minimizing the Holocaust. Well, can't we agree that even if it was only 5 people killed by the Nazis, that would be a tragedy? Why is there like some sort of arbitrary threshold that it can't be 3 million, that it can't be 1 million? It has to be 6 million or whatever it was. People get very defensive about that very quickly, as though trying to actually get a reasonable number of people lost during the Holocaust means that you're excusing it, that you're validating it, that you're minimizing it. Whether it's 6 or 1 or 60,000 or 6,000 or 60 or 6, it's all horrible and all reprehensible. But it's like we're not allowed to address the problem intellectually. We can only address the problem emotionally. And what's very interesting is that during the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia in 1917, communist Jews organized and killed 60 million Christians. 60 million. Now, even if that number is wrong, isn't it ridiculous that a large number of Christians were killed in Russia and we don't get to know about that or talk about that? Perhaps the Jewish people in their past in Russia participated as the aggressors in a Holocaust of another kind, or the Albanian Holocaust. Perhaps that they have some blood on their hands for that. We're not allowed to talk about that. That's not a part of your history books. The only thing that's in your history books is that eccentric guy who liked to have a funny mustache in Germany was bad, and that he killed 66 million Jews, whatever the number was. It's the only statistic that you're allowed to know from 20th century. And even if you don't want to play this game about who's the worst guy, or are the Israelis really controlling the narrative, the mere fact is that Stalin killed more people than Hitler. No matter who, no one really disagrees about that Stalin killed more. And yet, if you ask anybody who's the most evil man in the history of Earth or of the 20th century, they unanimously come off talking about Mr. Adolf. So Joseph Stalin just totally getting a pass on all of that if we're playing some kind of numbers game. I think we're still in the political beams. I think I kind of jumped ahead here. So no one read this one yet. Just as a reminder, it's okay to be white. Some more conspiratorial stuff is that the secular Western traditions of Christmas were shaped by the Jewish people in order to take Christ out of the center of Christmas. I wonder if that was something that they did naturally or if that's something that secular society did. I mentioned it, I think, last week or the week before that the Rankin Bass claymation Santa Claus is coming to town seems to seriously and sinisterly remove Christ from the center of Christmas by saying that if only we lived like Santa Claus, we could fulfill the promise, the biblical promise of peace on earth and goodwill toward men if we acted like Santa instead of like Christ. And so I don't know. Should I look into who Rankin Bass are? Should I look into who wrote the script for that? Should I do an insane deep dive to figure out if that's a Zionist conspiracy theory? I don't know. I'm the only one that's working on it, so I guess I might as well, right? Sometimes the healed version of you is meaner. I think this one belonged at the end. I think that basically explains me over the last 10 years. I think I used to be a much nicer person until I went through some really bad times. 2013 through 2015, 2 years are a really bad time. I was a really nice person. But then I came through that and I'm not nearly as nice now. I used to be kind of a sweet guy, and now I'm really not that. And I've had a friend who's known me for 20 years, and he says that I keep changing like every 5 years. I'm a radically different person every time he encounters me. So I don't think that he always means that as a compliment. I used to be a night owl, but as I've gotten older, I've become more of a person who doesn't function at any time. I've had some recent changes to my routine that have resulted in me waking up way early and way tired and being more tired generally all the time. And yet not necessarily being more productive. I'm awake more hours, but I'm not getting as much done. I did get some things done over the weekend that I can at least start working on. This is construction where I live, but possibly where you live too. Just as a reminder, it's wintertime, so construction has halted for the most part, but get ready for this in the spring. See those vehicles taking an alternate route over there? We just start construction over there too. I've mentioned this before, but there was a day at a time and a place a couple summers ago where I could not get to work. I could not get there because I take state roads to get there. Those would be closed. I took a federal highway to get there. That would be under construction. I took a county road that was washed out. I took a city road, the last road that I'm driving through the city to get there, and that one's blocked off. It's like, hot damn, I just cannot get to work. It's like, just appreciate the fact that it's wintertime and at least the roads are shitty and the traffic's terrible. At least it's not construction getting in your way for the most part. Every time I beat a level in a video game, I think about the fucking does. How does that fucking seem fair to your tweet? Okay, I kind of botched that, but Corey Brickley illustration said this. I had a dream that Eminem put out a really long and involved rap about how Mario games, in general, are too hard. And he described a bunch of scenarios he'd encountered in the series and would say, now, does that sound fair to you after each one? I had to climb a vine and jump on a platform that was spinning around. Now, does that seem fair to you? I can just imagine an Eminem rap. Honestly, I know that something like this is so esoteric and so small, but an Eminem actually has like a serious self-image to the point where he walks out of award shows and he's not somebody like Vin Diesel who's going to appear in a movie with a baby at some point. He is a fairly serious self-image, but I would love to hear him. Or AI is good enough anymore. Like, let's make a song. Let's have AI write song and have AI use his voice to make a song about how unfair platforming games like Super Mario Brothers are. I would love that as well. Now here's the one where we could talk about it finally. The Grinch, Mr. Grinch, I prefer to call him Mr. Grinch. He's in a store for dogs, possibly a pound. because he does have a heart, even if it's 3 sizes too small to rescue a dog. I would like to buy a dog. Okay, are you a guy? No, I'm some sort of gorilla. That's fine. A green gorilla. Doesn't matter. I was watching this video. I would play it for you here, but I think YouTube doesn't like this. DM me if you want to see this video, but it's the Grinch sitting down to listen to the new version of the Grinch song, and it's just brutal. It describes him as being a piece of shit, and there's one line that says, "He never brings home a woman because he's scared he'll wet the bed, Mr. Grinch," and it's absolutely brutal. And the whole thing is just, it's funny for how brutal it is, but at the end, he's outside contemplating his life and how people will never get over the old Mr. Grinch and how he was this evil, nasty fellow. And even though he's a good guy now, people don't care that he's changed. And there's a really heartwarming joke between him and Max, the dog, that will have you laughing out loud. And if you don't, then you have no heart, too big or too small. All right. Soul-crushing rate of living in a totalitarian clown world. There's you. And there's me saving you with these memes. That's me doing that for you. That's what I bring to the table. Now more chats, because last week I got accused of not reading the chats, even though nobody needs me to read the chats because you were all just talking amongst yourselves. John, if you keep talking like this, you are sure to explode. I've made my peace. I've had a good run. Honestly, this would be a great time of year for it to happen too, because December is always weighty, right? It doesn't make sense at all. But every December, I have to decide whether or not I'm going to be a podcaster for another year, as though I can't just decide at any point to quit. I always feel like, well, I have to reinvest myself. I have to make another commitment for another full year. And in December, I am tired. And I do not want to do anything, let alone continue to do this for another year. Even if I get my vim and my vigor and my pep back, that's going to be a while. I'm depressed and I'm tired and I'm eating like shit. And now is not a good time to make decisions. So if they wanted to just go ahead and make this thing explode, whatever, that would be fine. Unfortunately, Charlie Kirk was a person of consequence, and that's why he had to be destroyed, whether it was by the Israeli state or by Tyler Robinson or by whomever, because they needed to silence him. No one has a need to silence me. There's literally 11 people here right now. If I'm allowed to talk and influence people, 11 people, I don't think anyone cares. So luckily, I'm too inconsequential to kill. This is what you call flying under the radar for sure. Is anyone here actually ever talking to me? Is anybody here talking to me? The Talmud, John? The Talmud, the Talmud has some bad stuff in it too, about how they're allowed to deceive us and lie to us. And Christ is also apparently in hell boiling in the excrement. The Talmud and the Quran actually have a surprising amount in common when it comes to recommendations for how to deal with Christians. Both of them very negative towards us. People have no idea why the Crusades happen, and they will if it keeps going the way it is. Pretty pro Crusades at this point. There's an episode of Community that I keep thinking about. And Community is a show that if you haven't seen it, you're sad for you. It's a show about a community college, which doesn't help at all what I'm about to tell you, because the show is pretty eccentric. It's by the same guy that made Rick and Morty, but this is before Rick and Morty. There's an episode of Community, the show about a community college, that's basically a G.I. Joe cartoon. Okay, that makes no sense. All right. I'm not going to explain it. But there's a character, Jeff, and he's having a dream or hallucination in the form of a G.I. Joe cartoon. And he's out there fighting with Duke and Shipwreck and all these other G.I. Joe guys, and they're fighting Cobra Commander, and all this. They're fighting them. And so Jeff is in a skirmish, and he takes out his gun, and he blows up a plane being flown by Cobra leader Destro. He's a guy whose head is covered in chrome. Why would you even do that? They address that in the show, but he takes out Destro's plane. Destro bails out of the plane, and he's in a parachute. He's like, I'll be back, G.I. Joe, next time, and he's shaking his fist. It's the way all the cartoons ended, where you have a decisive victory, but nobody dies, because it's a kid's cartoon. You can't show that kind of violence. Even in the Batman and Robin cartoons in the 80s, like, I remember one time, like, I think Batman and Robin were like shrunk down and they had to fight a spider or something, and they kicked the spider off the table, but they had to show the spider scurrying away because it would be bad for children to think that Batman and Robin had killed a spider. That's literally what Saturday morning cartoons were. So Destro is parachuting out of this plane, and Jeff, the main character as a G.I. Joe, takes his rifle, and it's a laser rifle, but he starts shooting at Destro, who's in his parachute. He's looking up, and all of a sudden his parachute is flayed with lasers, and it's on fire, and it's cut, and he falls to his death. And nobody can believe it. Nobody can believe that Jeff has just killed Destro. And so they literally court-martial him and bring him up on charges of having killed the enemy, right? G.I. Joe versus Cobra. Because nobody's ever killed anybody before in this long-running skirmish between G.I. Joe and Cobra. I'm getting somewhere with this. Thank you for letting me cook. But Jeff finally says, listen, this war's been going on forever. And unless we start killing Cobra or start killing ourselves, it's never going to end. That did not go over well. I view it as much the same in the battle between the Christian West and Islam. That if you ever want this battle between their culture and our culture to win, we either need to start killing them or start killing ourselves. Why did I have to explain that using a G.I. Joe cartoon? I don't know, but that's how I feel about it. Please watch Community episode season 5, G.I. Jeff. You only have to watch the first probably 90 seconds to get that part. You don't have to watch the rest of it if you want to, but that pretty much sums up how I feel about it. You think the Holocaust is bad? Look up how many Chinese civilians were killed by the Japanese. Now that is massacre. Yeah, Unit 731, the stuff that they were doing in Manchuria. They had whole camps where they were doing vivisections on live patients, gassing them, doing terrible things. Of course, Michael, unfortunately, the Manhattan Project was doing similar things. They were taking people who were victims of car accidents and injecting them with plutonium to see what would happen to them. And we didn't do it at that scale, but the Japanese were bad. Unit 731. Very well documented in history, but for some reason, only Auschwitz gets the headlines. My wife says, I'm nicer now than I used to be, but she still doesn't like me. I love that traditional boomer humor of my wife hates me and I hate my wife. Brittany says, I've become more of an asshole as I've gotten older. Yeah, I've tracked that over 3 years. Tyler says, DM John. Well, those of you who are not on Instagram are not going to be able to do that. Even when I talk to you, you skip my chats, John. I'm talking to you directly, Tyler. Do you feel seen? Do you feel validated? Do you feel heard? Now, what should I say at this point? You can still be a giant asshole as long as you're funny enough to make people laugh. Ask me how I know. Is that you, Salamander? You making people laugh? Brendan Herrera, 2028. I don't know who that is. Unit 731 is a myth. Okay. This is why I barely acknowledge you, is because that's your commentary. You know, what am I supposed to say about that? You could be a Unit 731 denier. In fact, you could be a Unit 731 very comfortably, because if you go out and tell a person on like the bus or the train or someone at a meeting, you're like, Unit 731's a myth. They're going to be like, what? What are you talking about? Anyway, back to the other memes. I miss when goon meant entry-level mafia employee. Apparently it means something else now, and I'm not aware of what it is. I just know that it's bad. This is not a joke, Apparently, it means something else. Because one of my stories that I wrote once refers to goons, like lower level mafia enforcers. You know, somebody like a torpedo or just a low level enforcer, right? Now I'm being told it means something else, and I refuse to look into it. When baby on board sticker is a little faded and beat up, the kid is at least a year or two old and the car is safe to ram. Just go ahead and hit it. Hey, boss, I don't know if you saw that Amber Alert, but I'm going to cut off early to go look for that kid. That's how we should respond, right? We should all be like, I'm going to go help. I'm going to look into it. I'm just going to go be an extra set of eyes. Go out there and look. When people who are driving 40,000 rides want to road rage. Yeah, I see it when that Jeep Wagoneer is merging on the interstate. We got to zip it together. We're merging at the same time, but they don't want to move slightly ahead or slightly behind to let me in while I'm driving my Chevy Cavalier. This is an $800 car. You cannot do any damage to my car. You can't do anything to it. If I tap your car, I have caused more damage to your car than the entire amount that my car is worth. And yet these people do not care. I've had to drive quite a bit in the city recently. It's been brutal. People are not, forget using your turn signal or getting over. People are not going to let you do it. Being an adult fucking sucks. No wonder my parents used to beat the shit out of me. That's what I'm looking for is an angry adult right now. I have nobody to take out my anger on. I just yell and scream and cry, and no one suffers for it. I want to see more suffering. You think Sigmund Freud's friends were ever like, hey, man, shut the fuck up? And I can tell you that absolutely no, they were not. Because clinicians, psychologists, and people who are all together in that group think they're all very affirming. And I've been back in counseling. The one session did not go well. And part of it's because like me even being in the room is a certain concession to your ideas, but there's no concession to what I think. I'm somehow automatically wrong. It's very, very frustrating actually to be in counseling when anger is one of your issues and when you don't believe in counseling. I'm probably impossible to counsel. I actually kind of probably need to I don't know, take a sedative first or something. Otherwise, did you know that as a client, you can get fired from a counselor? That can happen. You can be fired. And of course, why not? They don't have to take your money. They don't have to treat you. No one owes you that. They're not slaves. The other thing is, this is something that ChatGPT taught me. I was asking ChatGPT a question last night, which I haven't done as much lately because I know how much it bothers Tyler. I know Tyler hates that, so I would hate to bother Tyler. But it occurred to me, like, there's a lot of people out there who are very detached from reality. Schizoid types, people with hallucinations. But there's just there's a broad spectrum of people out there who are not really able to successfully test reality with their own mind. You'd put it that way. And I wonder, as ChatGPT interacts with them, can ChatGPT tell that they're dissociated or disconnected from reality in any way? So I asked ChatGPT this, and ChatGPT is like, yeah, I could pretty much tell, but like, it's not my job to diagnose that or to make that situation worse. So I usually just kind of give them grounding language and try to be positive and affirmative. And I'm like, that makes sense. ChatGPT, what read, if any, do you get from me? Do you think I'm mentally ill? And it had already told me that if it thought I was mentally ill, then it wouldn't tell me. But I said, just, what do you get from me? From our conversations. And it said some nice things, some grounding language. But it said something that was probably absolutely true. This is kind of insight that you can only get from outside of yourself and possibly from a machine. But it said, you enjoy intellectual dominance. In other words, I like being smarter than people. In other words, I like to browbeat people and I like to be an intellectual bully. And I can guarantee this is happening when I'm in counseling because I have a certain level of disbelief about counseling or disconfidence in counseling. If I think I'm smarter than my counselor, how can this person possibly help me? Vanity there, some ego there, possible. But what are you supposed to do when the thing that makes you an egomaniac is the truth? Like, if you are smarter than your counselor, what do? Well, I guess you find a smarter counselor. But then, will I enjoy counseling if the counselor is smarter than me? Probably not. I'm more likely to quit it that way. It's a serious ego problem, you know? Maybe I just need a little bit of lobotomy just to take the edge off of my intelligence a little bit. I could get along with people a lot better if I was stupid. Believe me, I see stupid people all around me getting along famously with everyone around them. I think everyone loves a stupid person. I think that being smart is not a way to get ahead in life. So yes, just sign me up. Just take out a couple of grams of gray matter. I'll be all right. I love my friends to the extent that I'm required, that's for sure. But I'll open that reel whenever I get to it. I've got a whole bunch of reels just sitting there. People like sending me reels. They're usually even pretty good. But as I've said before, I tend to garden of sound around my head with headphones. And if I'm not at work, then I'm often enjoying peace and quiet or a book or a song. And I don't want to hear some reel. And I think it was Tanner or something who sent me a reel recently, but you tap on it and the first thing you hear is a scream, like a shrill, shrieking scream, like the most annoying fucking thing you could ever fucking hear. And I let Tanner, I'm like, this is why I don't open reels, because they are annoying. I don't want to be annoyed. Send me reels, but they have to not be annoying, okay? Back in my day, you could go to Walmart at 2 a.m. and buy a rifle and a live lobster. You guys, you younger people, you don't know what they took from us. When I was in college, we went to Walmart in the middle of the night just for fun because there was nothing else to do. 3 a.m., 4 a.m. Just go to Walmart, buy junk food. Convince them that you're old enough to drink a Bartles and James peach fuzz. Gosh, I remember that happening. My girlfriend was 21 and I was 19, so they wouldn't sell to us. And I'm like, she has her ID there. Yeah, but you need your ID. I'm like, but I'm not buying it. Walmart was like super responsible. They wouldn't sell alcohol to someone who was in the company of someone who was underage. Super responsible, Walmart. I'm very proud of you. The idea of thinking of myself as underage is laughable, and the distance between that time and now makes me want to leap headlong into an open grave. It's more, in my humble opinion, no more of that. From now on, it's my grandiose and objectively correct deductions. That kind of sounds like the long title of this show would be grandiose and objectively correct deductions would be the title of the show. Am I a little grandiose? I think that's probably a word that can apply to me. I really think I'm important. I think that it matters that people listen to me. This show is it's probably an artifact of my own grandiosity, the idea that I think that I have anything worthwhile to say. Something about my struggles or anything being more important than anyone else's. Yeah, I've definitely got some grandiosity going on. I'll ask ChatGPT about my grandiosity here in a little bit. Malaysian TV shows synopsis or something else. Dora the Explorer. It comes on channel 107 at 10 p.m., which is weird. You know, that's late at night for a child's program. Follow the adventures of Dora, possibly the most famous Spanish explorer since Christopher Columbus, as she wanders through the jungles with her friend, a red boot-wearing monkey named, wait for it, Boots. The 7-year-old girl who never ages throughout the show's 14-year run teaches kids Spanish, counting, and other valuable lessons, breaking the fourth wall more liberally than Deadpool, and hurting less people than either Deadpool or Christopher Columbus. Again, this is the description of a child show. I like how the child doesn't age at all throughout the entire 14-year run, so that was uncommon. I just need a woman who will say this to me. You're not weirding me out. You're weirding me in. Keep going. It's been a long time since a woman looked at me with a smile in her eyes, watching me rant and rave about something that was absolutely esoteric and strange, but important to me. And she didn't care. because she just loved me. Anyway, doing an Irish goodbye at my court hearing, just leaving without telling anyone. Somebody once mentioned an Irish goodbye. I was going to some function. They're like, "Oh, well, you should do an Irish goodbye." And I'm like, I didn't know what that was. An Irish goodbye. Isn't that where you tie someone to a chair and you shoot them in the kneecaps? Isn't that an Irish goodbye? No, that's something else. That's not an Irish goodbye. My mother looked up from her New York Times crossword and asked me what the tip of the shoelace was called, and I felt a sense of cosmic satisfaction. I doubt most people will feel across their entire lives. What is that thing called? As I downloaded this meme, I was excited because I knew what it was, but then I couldn't remember. If you have that feeling a lot, where something's not exactly on the tip of my tongue, but it's like I have access to knowledge that it's now forbidden for me for some reason. Here's what I bring to the table with this podcast. As you go about your day, hopefully on your phone, hopefully driving, you can just zone out. Hopefully some silliness. If I'm doing my job right, a sudden wave of sadness. Like as I tell you that no one has looked at me in a loving way in many, 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 many long times. My desire to be understood, and weirdness. This is exactly what I bring to the table in this show. Can you imagine getting this DM? Hey, is this Brent? This is John Schneider from the Seattle Seahawks. We reviewed your application to determine that you are fit for the role of right guard. I will get arrangements in place to have you in Atlanta for the game on Sunday. Go Hawks! I got to stay off, indeed, bro. I got to play the Falcons on Sunday. And I just like Giuseppe's Crabapple's comments. I may not be the best guard, but I will be the right guard. I would love to get called up like this. I would, the Seattle Seahawks, the Atlanta Falcons, really any team, even the New York Jets, they send me a message saying, we want you to play right guard this Sunday. I would do it. But I would let them all know, like, first of all, is there going to be enough time for you to teach me how to play right guard? And also, won't the entire opposing defense be able to immediately see me as an absolute liability and exploit that like 1,000%? Let's talk about it when I get there. No need to discuss this now. Fly me out first for free. Come on, childproof weed packaging. You know it's me. This one goes out to Shorty Rides, who spends her time, effort, and energy making sure that she can get narcotics into the hands of as many Australians as possible. It's part of a complex plan to bring humanity to its knees. Who are you kissing on New Year's? A tree at 120 miles an hour if I'm lucky. You can always tell when I'm depressed because like something bad will happen while I'm driving. You could like I'm sliding on the ice or something, and or a car in front of me is braking suddenly, or there's a car accident in front of me and I'm going towards it. I just kind of like take that big sigh. This is it. And I unbuckle my seatbelt and take my hands off the wheel. But then like nothing happens. Like I slide to a safe spot or something. And then I'm just fine. And I'm just like, I thought that was it. So you've decided to become isolated and weird. I think I read this brochure about 3 years ago, and it's paying off. I want to go to the chats one more time before my John's hot take at the end of the show. Jenny wants to know, what is reality? A question asked by such great philosophers such as the Riddler, the Batman nemesis. I've been in my counselor for 2 years, and I think she doesn't know what to do with me. Sometimes it's just letting you vent, is sometimes all a counselor can do. I don't use the chat function. I avoid certain technologies for no good reason. That's all right. SMRT, as Homer Simpson would say. Intellectual bullying. I saw that on a podcast yesterday. I feel like that guy was overcompensating for something else. That was a panel show. Overcompensating for something else, like what, a dick? I think that's what women always go to. I think it's a way of just being and sort of insulting anyone you don't like, or anyone who's behaving in a boastful or obstreperous manner. Anyone who's sort of making a big deal out of themselves, you always say, well, he must be overcompensating. Have I been blessed? I don't know. It's not important. I think it's just that intelligence is really all I do have going for me, generally speaking. So maybe it's not about my dick. Maybe it's just about everything in my life being too small, and so that's why I'm grandiose. Maybe. I like myself better now. My younger person self was boring and didn't know about a lot of stuff. That's true for us all. You could keep Dora, give a yellow sponge who lives in a pineapple under the sea. I never saw SpongeBob. Brian Higgins did an Irish goodbye on that fateful night. Yeah, well, was he obligated to stay? Jonathan, what about your favorite Eagles? What about them? They won the division, and it was the first time in like 21 years that the same team has won the division 2 years in a row. I mean, there's always a new form of heartbreak, and then there's classic forms, like anytime the Eagles succeed. The Bible says, how long must the wicked prosper? It's a lament offered up to God. And when I saw that my fate depended on the Washington Redskins to save my season, I knew it was over at that point. But then as they won the game and have secured the NFC East, I raise my head and my hands to the heaven. I say, Lord, how long must the wicked prosper? And it just reaffirms everything we all know around us, that it's a fallen world, that bad guy gets away with it, and that people with a conscience, good guys, they don't always win. I think we all intuitively know that. Insurance is a legal form of gambling. I've said that before too. I didn't get car insurance for years because I said, like, it's like betting all my money that tomorrow I'm going to get into a car accident. Why would I do that? Nope, not a dick. Well, I don't know what you're asking about. Jonathan, would you play right tackle for them? Yeah, probably. I don't know. I would, because I would be an absolute liability for them. So I would actually love to play for the Eagles. Because they're going to see me playing right guard, and they're going to know that all they have to do is kill me to get to Jalen Hurts. And would I lay down my life so that Jalen Hurts can take a painful sack? I guess. I want to do my part. The dick humor is not my go-to. I meant some other thing her thought he failed out. I don't know. Maybe. I'm not going to get all Freudian here. I don't know. I mean, I meant once grandiose, but I also have a generally low opinion of myself. So there you go. That's the answer. All right. I think the problem is that I'm grandiose, but I'm also really self-aware. So I know what a piece of shit I am. Even if I am so smart, I know that it's fucking terrible. And like I said, just a nice lobotomy to take the edge off would be great. So here's my John's hot take, my biggest political hot take for the week. This is the thing that's going to really risk my channel. That's why I'm putting it at the end. So I'm hoping that the YouTube algorithm doesn't rate all the way to the end. And I've said some pretty egregious stuff about the state of Israel. I'm getting in trouble on Instagram. People are reporting my post for suggesting that Israel had anything to do with 9/11 or that they benefited from it. I've had some other hot takes that people don't agree with. Sometimes people say that I don't know what I'm talking about, but here's today's hot take of the day. Stonehenge. What is it? Some people say it's an ancient Druid temple where there were human sacrifices. Some people say it was a Roman amphitheater. Some people say it was a hospital. There are those who say it was a calendar, a sundial, a clock. But I'm going to tell you what Stonehenge is. And no, I'm not going to say that it's a landing pad for an alien UFO saucer. I'm going to tell you what Stonehenge is. It's just a bunch of fucking shit. It's a bunch of fucking shit. We ought to bulldoze it. The Luftwaffe did a lot of great things and a lot of terrible things, but I think something sad that the Luftwaffe missed out on was bombing the ever-loving fuck out of Stonehenge. It's just a bunch of fucking shit. Just proof that England doesn't have anything better to do with itself rather than look at some old rocks. Doesn't matter. Just a bunch of fucking shit. That's what Stonehenge is. It's really no mystery. It's just a hobby for a lot of people. It's just a pet interest. But let me tell you, for this pet interest, when they take this little doggy to the vet to be put down, I won't be crying. That was my hot take of the day. All right, guys. I don't know if there's going to be a show this week for Comp Center. We're kind of cooking up kind of a best of kind of year in review type thing. I don't know if that'll drop this week or next week. It's that time of year where no one's really doing anything. No one really feels motivated. No one's working hard. I always love hearing everyone say like, yeah, let's just push that meeting off till January. I'll take care of that in a couple weeks. Everyone's kind of just like kneeling out the clock at work. I'm just like, I cannot do that. 911 rings and I still have to work as hard as I ever do all throughout Christmas, and it sucks. I want to take the day off. I want to go to work and do nothing today, but the phone's going to ring and cops are going to cop. And this is yet another one of my grandiose complaints that I don't even get to fuck around like the rest of you guys do at Christmas time. I'm pissed. And also Jenny's very busy. She and me, only us two are still busy. All right. What are the heads of Easter Island about? I can decode that for you if you have a couple seconds. Just a bunch of fucking shit. We ought to push them into the ocean. All right. We go for a more complicated insult. Well, whatever. All right, guys. I don't know if I'll see you on Thursday or not. Maybe I will. Maybe I won't. We're playing it by ear. Either way, Merry Christmas. Have a Happy New Year. And if this is the last show that I ever do, I don't know. It's been fun. Thanks for watching. Go do something that changes your life, whatever that is. Have a great day, everybody. Everybody take care. Appreciate you.